Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dr. Sophia ObGyn Podcast. I'm an ObGyn practicing for over 15 years in my native New York City, and I love to help women learn about their bodies, empower them, and embrace themselves. On this podcast, we talk openly and with heart about all things affecting women, from pregnancy, menopause, periods, sexual health, fertility, and so much more. Disclaimer: this is general medical information based on my professional opinion and experience. For specific medical advice, please refer to your physician. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Sophia ObGyn Podcast. Today, we will be speaking on a topic that is just so interesting to me, not just because I am an ObGyn, but because it affects every woman's life. We are talking about periods, and we'll specifically be addressing the first period. What was it like? What is it like? What is it? When should women experience it? When do girls go through it? All things period related. As usual, I am joined by my co-host and good friend, Touseef Mirza.
Hi, everyone. So we're going to be talking about first periods, and it's not also just for the women who are going through or thinking about their first period. So like teenagers or young teenagers, but it's also for the caretakers of these
young women.
Yes. And how can we help them through this important transition in their life?
Absolutely.
So we're literally going to go through basics, and for the caretakers, for the moms, for the aunties, for the dads, for the brothers, everybody, we're going to just be talking very in basic terms, so you can also use that to help communicate that information.
Definitely.
So let's start with the very basic of them all, which is, what is a period?
Your period is when your uterus releases the blood, or the lining of the uterus sheds after it's been built up over the course of usually about a month. And your uterus is like basically waiting for a pregnancy. So it goes through these changes over the course of the month to thicken up this lining. And then when you don't actually get pregnant, you then release that lining. And the release of that lining is called your period.
So the moment that you have your period, it means that you can be pregnant.
That is correct, because it means that you have had ovulation, which means the release of an egg from your ovaries. And therefore, you have eggs that can be fertilized and therefore become pregnant.
So when we say period, it's actually when the shedding of the lining of the uterus happens and it shows up as blood.
Yes, it shows up as blood because that bloody tissue is what was being built up, now is no longer needed. Mm-hmm. And so your body expels it.
Why is it called, I know it's menstruation. Why is it called a period?
It's called a period from a Greek word that kind of meant recurring cycle. And I think that's how we later became to adopt it with something that's happening at a regular time. Mm-hmm. And in English now, it's become basically synonymous with the word menstruation.
Mm-hmm. As we were thinking about this, I was trying to remember when I was young and I was 11, 12. I remember there was sex ed class and they had shown something that resembled physiologically what a woman's internal organs look like. And I had no clue what I was looking at. I had no clue, looked like aliens or something. And they said that, for the woman, you're going to have menstruation and you're going to have the blood coming out. And I was just like, I was horrified. I was like, I didn't sign up for this. Like,
Why does this have to happen to
why
me?
does this,
I'm good. It's not going to happen to me.
yeah, why is this happening to me? And then there was this, I think I was 13. I was 13 when it happened. And I just had these cramps for a few days. But I thought, I was eating spicy food or whatever. And then I went to the school's bathroom and I saw the blood on my underwear and it didn't click. Like the first thing that came to my mind, oh, something's wrong, right? Because even if they told you that that's what would happen, you can't really understand it. And then I saw it and I was like, oh my God, something's wrong. And then I said, oh, is that what they were talking about? Is this what this is? And then I obviously, did not have any pads or anything like that. So I put some of those tissues, but I was just very confused of what was happening to me. And then it was almost like me and my best friend did have a deal that the moment that it would happen to either of us, that we would say it to each other. But I just felt I didn't know how to say it. And it was very uncomfortable to like come out. It was almost like it's like it was my secret. I did tell my mom because I couldn't like I needed something to put, like a pad. I don't know if it's like that now. Hopefully, like people are more open when they talk about it. But it was a very sort of mysterious thing. Even if people told me about it, it just felt like I was a little bit on my own.
But when you say people told you about it, so you did not have a full conversation or anything like that with a close, let's say, like your mom or an aunt or anyone like that to say, listen, you're now 10, 11, 12, 13, and you're now going through changes in your body, and this is what we expect. So maybe, this is what you should what can happen. This is how you may feel. Or when you started having those cramps a couple of days before, did you tell anybody you were
I probably
feeling?
told my mom, and my mom probably gave me 2 Tums and call it a day. Nothing, nothing like there could be any other possibility. I'm half Pakistani, half Indian. My mom is Pakistani, and that's not something that they talk about in the house. It's not something that is a very openly discussed topic, just in general, in terms of women's reproductive system, or breast or anything that is very like feminine. We don't really talk about it. So I think one of the questions that for those that have not had their period yet might ask is, does it hurt? Because you associate blood with obviously
Pain.
like
Yes.
something's wrong, right?
Well, for some women, they may experience some discomfort for sure, pain, cramps, bloating. There's so many different feelings, but the actual blood itself doesn't necessarily hurt. And some women don't experience any symptoms of discomfort, cramps, or pain with getting their period. I think there's a lot of reasons why a woman may or may not experience discomfort or the cramps or pain itself. I would say in general, most women do feel something. And typically it is crampiness, bloatedness, perhaps, that can last for a few days and is, I want to say, tolerated, meaning that the majority of women probably don't need to do anything about it. They definitely feel weird in their bodies, but it passes. And if they do need to do anything about it, it's not anything very critical. Some women can just use, let's say, warm baths or warm compresses, a water bottle that to kind of keep in their lower abdomen when they're feeling their crampiness. Maybe a little bit of a belly massage or rub, just to keep it on the lighter side. Some women may use painkillers such as Tylenol or Advil or something in that realm for a day or two. And some women use absolutely nothing at all. Some women, they may exercise, they may drink a tea or feel, there's so many different ways in which women manage some of the crampiness, pain, or discomfort that they feel when their period comes. But when we're talking about the first period, I think let's go back for a second and just relay what's happening. That first period usually comes somewhere on average, their age is about 12, but a period can be as early as age 9 and usually as late as age 16, and happens after they've had breast development and typically after they've had a growth spurt, meaning they first develop their breast buds, then they gain some height, and then usually 1 or 2 years after that, they can expect to get their first period. And before that first period actually happens, young girls can experience all of a sudden they start to have some vaginal discharge that they'd never had before. So they see a little bit of secretions in their underwear. So that may be the very first thing that they may tell their parents about.
About how much time before their periods that vaginal discharge can appear? Like, is it a few days or a few months or?
I think it varies, but I would definitely say up to several months before. That's like
Okay.
your first signal that your uterus is now kind of activated from the hormones that are now being released, right? When you're going through puberty, that's because now your body is reacting to hormones, and there's perhaps a cyclical flow of those hormones kind of, which is what develops breast buds, which is what start to create changes in their body and their way their body is shaped, and, also giving them that growth spurt. So all of those things are related to hormones and
pubic hair
and pubic hair, exactly. Don't want to leave that out, but yes. So all of these changes are happening, and that includes, and I guess that's like the final thing actually is kind of like the period happens,
the last hurrah.
the last part of that puberty kind of phase is when they experience that first period.
So do you have any recommendations of when the caretakers could start having a conversation about menstruation with their daughters?
I don't think that there's any special time. I think the earlier you start having the conversation, especially if it's another woman in the household, I think it's okay. And moreover, not just that it's okay, I think it should be encouraged for young women to see their moms, go through their periods and talk about it and say they may end up be in the bathroom and or see their mom go and grab a pad, and then maybe that's an opportunity to have a conversation. I definitely think that we should be talking to our girls once they may develop pubic hair, breast buds, acne.
When you say breast buds, what does that mean exactly?
It's the start of breast development.
Okay.
And it starts as little nodules or buds. It feels like a little lump just underneath the skin.
So it's just
of the
literally
area,
the beginning of breast
literally the
development.
very beginning of breast development. It can honestly be very painful even when those breast buds kind of erupt. You start the development of the breast tissue. And that's in response to the body, responding to the hormone changes that are happening. And I think that that's a great opportunity to start to talk about all of the changes that will be happening, because it's not just breasts, it's not just pubic hair. And certainly their bodies will grow, their physique changes, they start to develop hips and become taller. And of course, they will get their menstruation.
So once they're seeing their daughters starting to develop in that way, do you have any suggestions on what would be a way to start talking about it to their daughters? I don't know. Maybe it's something that some parents don't know how to approach it, or maybe they
No,
feel.
I definitely think that parents don't necessarily know how to approach this. I know in my own experience with my own first period, I remember quite distinctly before my period actually happened, my dad actually being the person who, said, "Oh, let's go for a ride." And that ride turned into, "Well, Sophia, I want to talk to you about how your body's going to change." And I was like, "What's happening? Why are you having this conversation with me?" And
Yeah, because it feels like it's coming out of left field.
I was like, "What are you talking about? And why are you talking to me about this?"
Yeah, did I do something wrong?
Right. Like, am I in trouble?
Right.
But poor guy, he was really being sincere and trying to be like an advocate, I guess, at the time, or be very, progressive in talking to his daughter about the changes that are going to happen in her body. And granted, I say that with a grain of salt, though my dad was probably not thinking of himself as being progressive. He was trying to say, and so therefore don't you talk to any boys.
That was where I wanted to land this thing. Okay.
Okay. But I mean, he did do it in a very kind way, but it didn't change the fact that I still felt very strange. And I would say for me, luckily, I lived in a household with some older female cousins whom I remembered every time I'd go to the bathroom and I'd see all this like rolled up newspaper. And, periodically I'd see all this rolled up newspaper in the trash. And I'd be like, "What the heck is this thing?
Yeah, how did that get in there?
Yeah, like what's up with the rolled up newspaper?" And really what the rolled up newspaper was them rolling up their pads. And so that was the way in which in our household we kept it quote unquote discreet. And I would say that the real key here in how do we first approach it with young girls, I do think that, like I said, for me, my first conversation around it was with my dad. And I must have been, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9.
Oh, that's young.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it may have happened when my mom maybe told him that she bought me my first bra or something like that. And it's funny because I don't necessarily quite remember having that full on conversation with my mom. And I'm sure she did, right? I'm sure she had a conversation with me, but I distinctly remember going for the ride and having the conversation with my dad. And I would say that it is a conversation that should start as early as possible. I think 7, 8, 9 years old is very reasonable because it has to start with just your body is going to change. It doesn't necessarily have to go land, "Oh my God, you're going to get your period." And it certainly shouldn't even sound like that, "Oh my God." It should just be like, "Well, you're 7 and you're growing up and I love the way that you're growing and you're getting taller. And every year your body's going to go through some changes and we'll go through those changes together."
I mean, also when I remember when I was a kid, I always wanted to grow and be taller. So in that sense, it's like a nice way to say that, "Oh, I'm going to get taller, I'm going to get older." So
yeah, and
that feels
going to
good.
be what is it going to be like when I get to be like a woman, And I think the first period, we really have to do a good job of celebrating women, celebrating our young girls when they go through the transition of, going through puberty and going through that first period. I think it helps to decrease the level of like shame that can be associated with it, or the concept of secrecy, or has to be my own little, it's just so private that they feel like they can't discuss what's happening with them. And because that actually then becomes a pervasive problem that can happen throughout their lives, that they don't know how to talk to people about what's going on with them. And when I say people, that means even coming to medical providers or doctors, right? So the first line would be talking to their parents or caretakers in terms of, I have a period, I missed my period, or it's coming more often than I expect, or it's very heavy, or it's very painful. And if we shame the experience or make it so that we don't allow them to have a space to talk about it, then we never know what some of the problems are. And sometimes the first time that we know that there's a problem with your hormones, for example, can show up as a problem or a change in your period. When we think about the first period, though, the first couple of years after you get your first period, it can be very irregular. It can come every month. It could come every 2-3 months. It could come light. It can come a little heavy. It can be associated with cramps. It can not have cramps. You can have nausea, headaches, bloating, all of the things that we typically would associate with PMS. And that makes it a little bit kind of a little nerve-wracking even. And so that's another reason why it's important for us to have a really open and honest conversation. And that open and honest conversation needs to come from a lens or from a place of, your body is going through this process. Let's go through it together. Your body is going through this process. Let me help you understand what's happening. Your body is going through this process. Let me help you feel better through this process. And I do think that that will make our young girls feel encouraged, not just to talk about what's going on with them, but also to feel in camaraderie and community with their friends, and allow them to get accurate, good information. Otherwise, they, especially in this day and age where everything is available to them on their fingertips, right? They're just going to go to like whatever their favorite social media platform is to get the information. And if we are not the ones who are providing it and giving them a safe space to talk about it, then it's going to be, harder.
In order to help these young teenagers, these young daughters with their first period, is there a way that you would recommend on how a caretaker would talk to them, how they would describe what a period is? Because I think that's part of the sensitivity, is that it feels maybe a little bit uncomfortable, or they don't have the right know-how of saying it in a simple way, because it can get
really hairy, right?
and
Like,
icky,
what are we saying? What are we talking about here? And I think we need to bring all of the tools. I agree with you. It can feel very weird and uncomfortable. And for caregivers who really have no clue, I think it's important that they maybe involve their medical provider, the pediatrician and that kind of thing, if they really have absolutely no clue. But they can start with things like books and, visuals, or even, like I said, if it's a woman, then sometimes it's easier to say, mommy or sister or auntie, we have something that we will share and have in common. We will go through this process, and this is what it's called. It's called your period. And during that time of our periods, our bodies are doing something very important. Our bodies are going through a process that really is what makes us a woman. And that process happens at something called our uterus. So we should use proper terms. And our uterus is a special place of our bodies where, when we are ready to become mothers, this is the part of our body that gets pregnant. And the explanation of being pregnant, even, that the uterus is the place where our womb creates this space that can hold a pregnancy. And every month that we don't have a pregnancy, that lining that was building up to hold the pregnancy doesn't happen. And then our bodies naturally gets rid of it.
Because it's not needed.
Because we don't need it. It naturally goes away. That natural process is called our period. And in our period, that's when that blood, that nutrient-rich like the place that was going to feed. It's a feeding place. And when all those good nutrients are no longer needed, it comes out of our bodies, and that's what comes out as our period blood.
So if you're telling that to me, I would have two questions as a
Okay.
13-year-old. The first would be, I can have a baby? That would be the first thing. I can have a baby? And then now we're going a whole other ball game with the birds and the bees now, right?
That's so true.
Because now we've opened up the Pandora's box.
That's very, very true.
So that's one question. And the other question would be, blood? So is that good?
Am I going to die?
Am I going to die? Is it going to hurt? I don't like blood, because whenever we are taught, even as kids, like if you have a cut, like mama's going to run to you, right? And daddy's going to run to you. And it's going to be, oh, no, it's going to be fine. So we have this association, and rightfully so. I mean, we're not supposed to see blood on our bodies. But I think that there's that association of something bad has happened.
And this is where it's going to be the most important and critical point, is to express that nothing bad has happened. If anything, this is what makes you a woman. This is what's very special about you being who you are, and you having the capability to become a mother. So the concept of pregnancy, ovulation, ovaries, expressing all of the different body parts that are now developing, and why it's in that development that we now have something called our period. It's very important that they understand that those processes, and in order to make it feel more like, wow, my body is going through this. And what your body will then be capable of. It doesn't mean that it has to get pregnant, by all means.
Right.
However, your body has the ability to. And no, it doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It means that your body is going through a normal and natural process. And also to discuss the fact that, yes, let us know that it's happening so that we can support you through it.
Right.
It's not something that just because it's natural and normal doesn't make it easy per se. So we have to describe the discomfort and the cramps and the nausea that can happen, and the headaches that can happen, and the bloating that can happen, and the fatigue that can happen, and the fact that you may not want to talk to your friends when it's happening, or you may not want to talk to your siblings when it's happening.
Or you just feel different.
Or you just feel different. You may feel a little bit sad and you don't know why. Or you just don't want to do anything like play sports or, ride your bike. And you may want to sleep more. And so it's to even have the conversation so that you can make a space in the home that allows everybody to know that, this little girl is going through this particular time, and let's kind of give her space, give her what she needs, and just be more loving.
And also, I think just to check in with them, because like you were saying, especially the first few periods or the first year, even, there's a lot of fluctuation. It could actually be even more intense and can stabilize afterwards.
That is correct. It does. It takes certainly several periods for it to stabilize, because the whole system is kind of trying to become mature. It's the first, it's the signal that's going from the brain that then has to go to the uterus, and it's coming from the ovaries. And so that kind of like hypothalamus part of the brain that communicates with the pituitary part of the brain that then has to communicate with the ovaries, that then acts on the uterus through hormones. And that process takes a while before it can become on a regular cycle, and all the pathways are in line with the timing and the cyclical nature of it. So all of that, it takes time for it to really mature, just like every other part of your body. It's not overnight. And there are other things that just influence it: how you eat, how you exercise, what kind of stress you're under.
And at what point do you feel that a caretaker might say, you know what, we need to go see the OBGYN or the physician? Because we're saying that it's normal that it might be a little bit more intense in the first few months. But is there a point where we feel that we need more medical attention?
Certainly, you may need more medical attention if the blood flow is so much so that the child is becoming showing signs of things like anemia, becoming very pale, totally
Weak.
Very weak, dizzy, even shortness of breath, going through several pads in a day. On average, we say that people go to maybe 4 to 6 pads in a day, but let's say they're going through 10, 20 pads in a day that are soaked. A normal period only goes through like a half a cup of blood.
a whole
period.
A whole period. Okay.
So we have to think about it. We don't know how to
I've never heard that before. That's actually really important because it's true. We don't know. We don't talk about what is the heavy flow that needs medical attention actually means.
Yes.
Okay.
And it doesn't need to be an OBGYN. Your pediatrician is very well equipped with dealing with girls' heavy periods, and able to check for other medical conditions that may be putting a young girl at risk for having heavy periods and that kind of thing. But yeah, it should be a process definitely in those first few years where the caregiver and the girl are in communication in a good way around their period, that the young girl doesn't have to feel ashamed, afraid, or, that it's something that she cannot say, that I'm on my period, so that way she can get the kind of support that she may need during that time. And that support could just be, I just don't want to talk to anybody today.
Mm-hmm.
And that support could be, my stomach really hurts. Can I get something for it?
Mm-hmm.
That support can be, I have a headache, and that support could be, can I have a hug?
I think it's really important to open up that conversation when a girl is young, or else we perpetuate the aspect of secrecy of periods for a long time into even adulthood.
Yes, we do.
And so to be able to, right from the get-go, just say, okay, this is just a normal part of who I'm going to be. And that's just, it's like if I hurt my elbow, I'll talk about it, or, a natural aspect that's happening in my life. But it doesn't have to be like secret, and it doesn't have to be something that's wrong. It's just part of life.
It is. Periods are a very big part of life. It's a part of why life continues. So if we are not keeping up with making it so it's easy for us to talk about, we need to have our young girls and young women have a clearer and more comfortable understanding of their bodies. And in that gives them the opportunity to not have any shame around their bodies. It's another place for us to kind of put that feeling of, I am a girl, I am a woman, and my body is beautiful, and all aspects of it, and all the transitions that I go through, and really being accepting of who they are. And I think that that's a very first step, is when they're going through puberty, to kind of embrace exactly who they are.
Yeah, so to start that way is actually a great way to start normalizing it and even empowering women from the get-go.
From the get-go, from the very get-go, we should be celebrating periods. And it's funny how we have so many different cultural differences and examples of how women experience their periods. But one that was recently came to me was the fact of the concept of the quinceañera in a lot of Latin cultures. and where it's like this celebration of the transition into womanhood, which often aligns, it's the quinceañera or when they turn 15, probably aligned kind of with when they may have gotten their first periods or, sometime after, but it's that celebration of the fact that you have now become a woman in the community, your family, and, in front of your family. And people are typically very happy. It's a very big celebration. It almost just, and sometimes looks even like a wedding in terms of how much they are just celebrated. And I think that it's with that kind of encouragement and support and openness and happiness and joy that we should really come to every girl like that. And of course, every day is not going to be your quinceañera. Every period is not going to come as your quinceañera. But if the first one is like that, then it kind of sets up the concept, wow, me becoming a woman, me going through this transition is beautiful, it's special, it's mine.
We hold so much power in helping that happen for the next generation. So
we hold so much power in our womanness, in our womanhood,
Yes.
in our transition into womanhood with our periods. Until next time, embrace your body, embrace yourself. Thank you for listening to the Dr. Sophia ObGyn Podcast. Bye.
Bye.
This is general medical information based on my professional opinion and experience. For specific medical advice, please refer to your physician. Until next time, embrace your body, embrace yourself.